Okay, so I'm going to share with you my screen so you would see. Can you see it? Let's start with the fear. When we work with the fear, you probably know that we ask basic questions in the beginning just to get a general context. What are you afraid of? Why does it scare you? And then we're supposed to ask questions to go deeper. Things like, what is the worst thing that could happen with you in a given situation? Imagine that you are in this situation. What will happen to you? And when our client is giving answers, we ask them to go even deeper and say, okay, imagine that you're experiencing it. What the worst in this situation? And then what would happen? And then what could be the worst situation that will happen to you? Okay. So with each question, we're supposed to go deeper, deeper, and deeper. And you probably know already that a fear or phobia that clients come to us with, like a regional request, is far from the true or a bottom belief or bottom feeling behind the situation, right? So what we want to do is we actually want to guide them carefully, compassionately through all these steps in order to find the bottom belief. How do we know that we actually hit the bottom belief or bottom feeling? You will know it when you will see emotional reaction or some kind of emotions that come with the answer that they give you, right? So the feeling is actually the best indicator that we're getting close to the bottom belief or when we actually hit this. When we find this feeling, we wanna ask our clients to actually connect to this feeling and remember, when did they feel it first time and what happened back then. The best way to help clients to connect to these feelings, actually to ask them to locate this feeling inside the body. I think that's the way to connect to implicit memory that's stored in the body. And by asking them to find this feeling inside the body, we actually help them to recognize when something like this happened first time. When did they experience this feeling first time, right? So what we do is we actually guide them to a traumatic event that was a first event creating this bottom belief or bottom feeling, okay? Usually you would say, people would say, I remember feeling powerless. I remember feeling maybe lonely, or I remember feeling scared or abandoned. And through these kind of feelings, we guide them through the body in order to find the original experience of this feeling, which is usually trauma. And trauma was encapsulated for many years. That's why, not that actually limiting beliefs affect us in life. That's actually more traumatic event, and the energy charge that is associated with this event. That's what affecting us in our life. And that's why we want to help our clients to recognize this trauma and to heal it. I don't know about you, how you guys work with trauma. I usually prefer to take time as much as needed to witness healing of this trauma, to witness child usually most traumas happen to us in a child if we're not talking about genetic level or past lives. On the core level, that's usually early childhood. And I take time to witness this child who was experiencing trauma receiving emotional healing from the creator, which means I want to see that this child who was usually scared, lost, maybe feeling lonely, not understood, I want to see them receiving love that they needed, support, compassion, and I want them to see feeling safe and accepted as they are. So while I'm witnessing the creator sending all these energies to this child, I want to see that this child and the client who is witnessing this child actually feeling better. And after this healing happened, we can move on and actually replace the bottom belief with the new empowering belief and also download some feelings. As you probably know, that every belief comes with the supporting feelings. If I download to my client, I love myself, I want to make sure that they know what it feels like to love yourself, what it feels like to know when and how to love yourself, and also the clearest perspective of loving yourself, right? So every new belief will come with the supporting feelings. And it's pretty much for every moment when we replace limiting belief with a new empowering belief, which is usually the creator's truth, right? We want to make sure that our clients actually know how to integrate those new beliefs, those new ideas, which means they have a feelings associated with these beliefs, okay? And after we witness replacement of a belief, bottom belief, and we witness downloading new feelings, we want to go to the next step and we ask, what did you learn from this experience? What are your lessons from this experience? And usually people who are not familiar with fairy healing, and they don't really know what exactly we mean by this question, as a lesson, they can actually share some limiting beliefs again. Let's say if we talk to a client who was maybe abandoned by their parents, and they can say something like, I realized that I want to rely solely on myself. I cannot trust anybody, right? That's a limiting belief. And we want to make sure that this belief is replaced with a true belief, with empowering belief, which means that they can be independent, they know how to be independent, but they also know how to ask for help and receive support, right? We don't want them to think that they can trust only themselves or they can rely solely on themselves. So we want to suggest creator's truth and feelings associated with this truth. Sometimes I hear women who went through divorce and maybe betrayal. They would usually say, I learned that men are not trusted. I cannot trust any kind of man. I want to be alone. I want to be single. I want to do everything by myself. And again, that's a limiting belief, because in that particular situation, woman usually projects her relationships with one partner to all men, which is not true, right? And we want to show this woman that there are different kinds of men. Some of them can be trusted, some of them not. And that she knows how to use her intuition in order to understand who she can trust, okay? So we always suggest a new empowering or true belief and new feelings if we hear our clients sharing limiting belief as a lesson from the experience, traumatic experience. But if they share something positive, some kind of strength or some positive qualities that they gain through traumatic experience, like independence or compassion, or they learn how to forgive. These are virtues, right? These are important qualities they want to keep. And that's why we usually want to reinforce them and show them, create a definition of those feelings and mark these lessons learned. So they don't have to create this traumatic experience in their life because they already learned these lessons and they master those virtues, those energies. That's usually the logic behind digging process with fear. First step, we ask questions in order to find, just to get a general context and find the feeling, the strongest feeling in this digging process. And then we, through this feeling, we find the bottom belief. And when we witness healing of this trauma, we replace the bottom belief. And the last steps ask about lessons and also about benefits. How did it serve you to have this fear? Or how did it serve you to keep this bottom belief, right? What were benefits of keeping this energy for so long? So these general steps pretty much in every digging process. Let me know if you have any questions.
Hi, Paulina. I'm Twinkle here from India.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to say you explained extremely wonderfully. But
Thank
can you
you.
just give us some example,
Mm-hmm.
like for example, the fear of being say beaten up for being happy?
I don't know what kind of answers would be in this given example, because I never happened to me to work with a client like this. But let me give you an example with some common fears that I work with. Okay.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Thank you.
Let's say we have a clients coming, at least I had many clients coming to me with the fear of swimming, especially swimming in the deep water where they cannot touch the bottom. And usually when I ask them, why does it scare you? They say, like, I cannot touch the bottom and it makes me feel not safe. And when I ask, okay, what's the worst thing that could happen to you in this situation? And they could say, oh, I would drown, right? And I would die. But then usually you can sense if the dying is actually what scares them most or not. And I can guarantee that probably 80% of people that I work with, they're not afraid of dying. They're afraid of something else. And so we can go deeper and we ask, oh, what scares you about dying? What's the worst about dying? And some people will tell you, I'm afraid of leaving my children. And some will tell you, because if I die, that means I'm a failure. I fail. I failed my parents' expectations. I failed my mission on this planet Earth. And again, there are many options, but you will recognize the bottom belief and the bottom feeling because they will have emotions behind it, right? You will hear the actually voice kind of trembling, right? It's not the normal voice that your client has. If a client is just, I will die probably, and I will get back to the creator, and then I will start again, that means you're on the wrong path because they not actually scared of it, right? There is no feelings behind these answers. And that means sometimes you might want to start from the beginning again. Imagine yourself in the deep water. What are you afraid of, right? Because you want to find the branch in this digging process that has a feeling associated with it, right? Because you want to feel that they're actually scared. And the closer you get to the bottom belief, the more scared they become, okay? I want to share another example with you. Some clients come to me with a request like, I'm afraid of driving. Okay, why are you afraid of driving? What scares you most? I will get in the accident. Okay, imagine yourself being in the accident. What's the worst thing that could happen to you? And some people say, like, I probably will die. And some people will say, I will, yeah, maybe I will become disabled. I will be paralyzed. Or some people will say, I'm actually afraid of physical pain, right? So we want to, once they're giving these answers, we want to hear the answer that has emotions behind it, because every person will have very specific answer that's relevant to them. There's no one answer, right? Correct answer for all clients. But I once had a client who told me, I will get into accident. And then she say, as usually, oh, I probably will die, blah, blah, blah. But I could feel that that's not what scares her. So I asked her, let's go back to the accident. What's the worst thing that could happen if you get in the accident? And she said again, I will damage my car. Okay, that's usually not what people worry about, but that was definitely her true answer. For some reason, she was afraid of damaging the car. And I asked her, why are you afraid of damaging the car? And she said, that's a gift from my son, right? This woman was 60 something years old. And the car that she was driving was her son's gift. And at that moment, her son actually got married and he had a child. And so what this woman was experiencing was kind of separation with her son. And she was scared that she's losing him. And that was her scariest thing for her. So what she wanted actually to feel that she is loved and still connected to her son. And that's what we are working on later. We actually were helping her to recognize that the bond that she has with her son is not going to disappear. She will be still connected to her son, despite that he has a family now. Okay, so we always want to find the answer that has emotions behind it, and that will lead us to bottom belief and sometimes bottom feeling. Okay, does it make sense?
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm glad if it's helpful. By the way, working with trauma and witnessing healing the trauma, usually that would be the only one moment during the session when I will ask client to open their eyes if I see very strong emotional reaction. Because usually we want our clients to keep their eyes closed during the session. During the whole process of the session, we want them to keep eyes closed because it helps them to stay in the subconscious level, right, of their mind. The clients who are with open eyes are completely different. They will give you completely different answers, usually because open eyes means wandering mind. And while they're wandering, they can start thinking about, oh, what am I going to cook for dinner? I need to call my mom, right? Something like this. And we don't want them to be in that kind of state because that's not a deep work we want to do. That's why we ask clients to close their eyes, and it will help them to go deeper into the subconscious mind. And the answers that they will give you from the subconscious level will be completely different. But the trauma and the healing of trauma, that's usually one moment when I would ask them to open their eyes, Not always, but if I see strong emotional reaction, that could mean that with the closed eyes, they go into reliving this trauma. They experience it again. And sometimes that can be too much, and we want to help them to feel safe in that moment. That's why we ask them to come back, open your eyes, you're here, you're safe, you're not in this trauma again, okay? And after the healing of the trauma done, we can ask them to close their eyes again, okay? Questions? Do you have any questions about this? No, okay, let's move on. Let's talk about resentment, okay? And then I plan to give you some time for practice. When we work with the resentment, you already know how to start the process, because the questions given right now, I think in the basic manual, right? You can find all these questions that will help you to start the digging process on resentment. Who do you resent? Why do you resent this person? What happened between you and this person? And when we ask these questions, we usually just have a general idea about the situation and about resentment behind it. We want to understand what exactly happened and how our clients felt in this situation. But the truth is that usually resentment has a deeper roots. If we're not talking about resentment with the parents, let's say we're talking about resentment between our client and the partner, or a client and the boss, or colleagues, or friends, anyone. Usually, I would say we need to look for deeper roots in the relationships with the parents, because parents are usually such a huge figures for us. They're so important that we tend to project resentment that we have in relationships with our parents onto relationships with any other person in our life. So the roots will be somewhere in the parents' relationships. Even relationships with God, usually I would say we need to take a look at relationship with the Father, usually, because we tend to project relationship with the Father onto relationship with God, with the Creator, because our parents actually gods to us when we were little. They're so big and powerful, and they know everything, right? They must be gods. And so with this perception of our parents as God, we actually tend to project on the Creator. That's why many people who practice manifesting, right? They try to manifest something, and when they don't receive what they ask, they tend to experience resentment towards the Creator, towards God. And that's because we bring this pattern from relationship with our parents when we ask them to buy us something as children and they wouldn't buy it to us, right? And this is where resentment comes up. So we want to ask our client, when did you feel this resentment first time? And again, what would be helpful if you would guide your client to locate the resentment inside the body. That can be in the throat area, can be in the heart area, or abdomen. And through this energy of resentment, they will be able to connect to original resentment and the traumatic event that happened in the childhood. And again, we witness healing for this child who was experiencing this trauma, and we make sure that they receive enough love, compassion, that they feel safe and understood. And after this emotional healing complete, we move on and we ask questions. What did you learn from this experience? And after covering lessons, we go to the next step and we ask, how did it serve you to keep this resentment? Okay. I would say usually in my practice, after going through lessons and after witnessing the healing of the trauma, we can already test and the resentment will be gone. 99% of the cases that I work with people, that's all they need to actually process this resentment, and forgiveness is created naturally. You don't need to do anything with it. But there are some clients quite stubborn, and resentment that they have is, very important to them. So they hold on to it. And in this case, I would help them to experience compassion and understanding of their client, of their parents. So what I usually would do, I would ask questions like, what do you know about your father's childhood? What do you know about maybe your mother's life when she was raising you? Do you know how many jobs she had to work, for example, right? Or do you know about parenting that your grandparents practice, for example? So we want to ask questions that will help them to understand the actions behind or feelings or reasons behind the parenting style of the parents and why they did it. So we want them to feel compassion towards their parents. And compassion usually naturally helps to feel forgiveness. But if compassion doesn't work, I usually suggest, let me just send you the energy of forgiveness through your whole body. And the energy of forgiveness is usually very cleansing. You can see how this beautiful energy just kind of flowing through the body and cleansing the organs, the whole body, and also can clean resentment. But what I usually suggest, never force your clients into forgiveness, because sometimes when people feel forced to feel something, to do something, they actually tend to resist more, right? So I think clients come to us for this energy of unconditional love and acceptance. And that's what the energy of the creator for them, right? In the energy of the creator, they feel fully loved and accepted exactly as they are. And they don't have to forgive their parents in order to feel loved and accepted. And that's what I try to be for my clients. So I will never force them to forgive. If they're not ready, I can say, okay, we can get back to this later whenever you feel ready. Just love and accept yourself as you are. And we'll see when you're ready to experience forgiveness. It doesn't have to be right now, whenever you're ready. But I would usually suggest finishing the session with a download, what it feels like to live without resentment, because the thing that we have with clients experiencing resentment is that resentment tends to be habitual. There are usually, there's a neural pathway that's responsible for resentment. And if it's strong enough, people tend to experience resentment too often, right? Even without reasons, they will feel offended. And what I suggest is to download what it feels like to live without resentment. So we would be able to weaken this neural pathway, and the people would be able to live actually without resentment, which means to recognize the moments when they would usually feel resentment. And in that moment, they would think, I actually can feel something else, right? There's an alternative way to react to this kind of situation. That's what happened to most of my clients when we do this resentment work. And later they send me a message like, I had this kind of argument with my husband, and I actually didn't feel resentment because I noticed that I can react in a different way. Or I had a client who had a quite strong energy of resentment in her body, And she texted me after our session that at her work, coworkers got pizza, and she was busy working with a client. And so when she was done with the client and she joined the rest of them, she realized that there's no pizza left for her. And she said usually she would feel resentment and she wouldn't say anything about it. But this time, because we helped her to live without resentment, she was able to actually express her feelings about it, but not to feel resentment, right? So that's what helpful when we have clients with habitual resentment, just to teach them how to live without resentment. Okay. Any questions on resentment work?
Thank you. It was beautiful.
Thank you. Questions. Questions or comments, please.
Lena,
Mm-hmm.
I get confused what to ask when muscle testing, because they always say don't ask something negative when you're muscle testing, and I get really confused what I should be asking.
Well, usually you ask them to test the bottom belief, right? If you recognize the bottom belief, you can ask your clients to test the bottom belief. For example, when we work with the resentment, you don't even need to create anything. You can just ask, I resent my father, and you ask them to test it. Yeah. When you work with the fear, you usually find the bottom belief associated with the strongest feeling. For example, I am powerless, or I'm alone, or I'm afraid to be alone. That would be a bottom belief, right? And so you ask them. But let's say you think you found bottom belief and you're pretty sure about the bottom belief. Well, when you ask your client to test it, they show no. Did it happen to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it happened to me many times. So what's helpful in this situation, when you think that you found bottom belief, but your client's testing negative to this bottom belief, is then you can ask them to rephrase this bottom belief. Use the words that sound more appropriate to you, because we want them to be able to adjust the phrasing, right? Keep the meaning the same, but find your own words to express it, and then test. And you will see that they will be much more successful with the muscle testing, the belief that they phrase themselves. For example, if I work with the belief and it's something about relationships with the father, I can say, I resent my father, and the test will be no. But if I say, I resent my daddy, for example, and answer will be yes, because it's all about how it sounds in their head, in their mind, right? If they never call their father, it was daddy, right? The answer will be different. Right. The same way, it's important to remember that with the bilingual clients, right? Answers will be different. You need to know that you actually testing client with the language that they spoken as a children, right? Because it's important how it sounds in their mind, in the subconscious mind. And usually it's written in a native language that they're speaking as children. Right. I know being Russian, like I need to test major beliefs. I need to test them in Russian, because in English, I wouldn't see conclusive results.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions?
I have
Yeah,
a question about,
okay, we have two people speaking.
let her ask, no problem.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
so I would like that if you can go more deeper about like physical disease childhood, if it makes sense.
I think the connection wasn't really good, so I'm afraid I didn't get the
Okay.
question. Can you say it again?
Yes, when you're healing people for physical disease,
Mhm.
can you go a little bit deeper about the childhood beliefs or childhood traumas, how they related, how like the digging, you know?
Um, okay. Not the digging associated with the illness not necessarily will be done on the core level, and not necessarily the reasons will be in the childhood trauma. They could be, but not always. Sometimes, let's say we're talking about cancer, and I had a client with a cancer, and the feeding energy of this cancer was the guilt, and the guilt was created and associated with the parent dying. So the client who had a mother that died 3 years ago, and the guilt associated with this, with the death of her mother, was a stress factor that started the process of cancer. So we didn't need to go to the early childhood in order to heal this thing. We just needed to heal this guilt. But it could be, let's say, there is a common belief that cancer patients, usually patients who tend to love other people and abandon themselves, betray themselves, right? It's called even cancer profile. So sometimes when we work with people like this, we really have to go to early childhood to see how this belief was formed, that loving myself is actually a selfish thing, right? Or I have to take care of others, but I'm not supposed to take care of myself. Does it make sense? Like sometimes, yes, the root will be in the early childhood and childhood traumas, but not necessarily. Sometimes stress factors that require our attention will be somewhere nearby, like 3-5 years ago, and that will be enough. Okay, did I answer your question? Yes, no? Okay.
Yes, yes, definitely. The guilt would be one of the main emotions, I believe. But what other emotions you would go through, like shame, guilt, these kind of?
Yeah. Shame, guilt, regrets, resentment, anger, hatred, all these negative emotions. Why it's important to work with them is because while hidden in our body, while suppressed for many years, they become harmful to our body and they start destroying us. And all of these emotions can be associated with the cancer or autoimmune diseases. I would say many diseases can be associated with these negative feelings. And I usually point it out, and I think it's really important to know that there's nothing wrong with these feelings. Anger is okay. Guilt is okay. Shame is okay. All of these feelings are okay. They're very important parts of our life as long as we're able to process them right away and we don't hide them and keep them hidden for years, right? There's nothing wrong with experiencing resentment if within a few days you're able to process it and share your feelings. Talk to your husband if you felt resentment towards him, right? Talk to your parents if you felt resentment. Like, we need to be able to express those feelings and process them, but not keep them stuck somewhere.
What about, for example, emotion like grief, and if client cannot process
Yeah, grief is one of the biggest ones. And I have a protocol working with grief, and I share it with my students when I teach Dig Deeper class. I usually add work with grief, guilt, and shame. And that's additional information when I teach Dig Deeper, because usually Theta Healing Institute suggests working with resentment, rejection, and regrets as the main ones, negative feelings, right? But I usually add working with the guilt and shame and grief, because they are also big ones. And of course, there is a specific healing that each client will require. We always have to adjust it depending on the person in front of us. But the main logic that you follow, that's what I shared with you right now. Probably the downloads will be different. The bottom belief usually will be a little bit different, depending on those feelings. But we still need to remember that keeping this logic behind and then adjusting it while you're working with the person, right? Because we're not machines, we still people. And that's why while we work with the real person in front of us, we want to make sure that they feel loved and accepted, not rushed through, right, with algorithms. But I would love to share with you how I suggest working with the grief and guilt and shame if you decide to do the Dig Deeper with me, because we have much more time to go through these protocols. Let me check the question in the chat. Ask when did something happen first time when did you? I think Tanya, you ask if there something that happened to you in the past, and when did you experience it first time, when you feel that roots might be deeper. Let's say if you're working with a woman who is going through divorce or a breakup, and she's talking to you about resentment with, towards her husband, usually I would say you need to ask, when did she feel it first time? Because that's not the original resentment. Or if, let's say, you're working with a client who's complaining that her partner or his partner is emotionally not available. Again, you want to ask, when did you feel it first time when somebody you love is emotionally unavailable to you? And that would be one of the parents, again, mother or father. Or let's say with pretty much any kind of feeling, except maybe with when we work with the rejection, and let's say my client said, I applied for this kind of job, but they didn't choose me. And I asked them to focus on this energy of rejection, right? Energy when you are rejected. And I asked them, close your eyes and tell me, when did you experience rejection first time? When did you feel it first time? And they will be taken by the implicit memory to early childhood, probably. Some people have it like in the kindergarten when somebody doesn't want to play with them, right? And that's the first trauma of rejection. Some people have a trauma of rejection when they're abandoned by biological parents and they're adopted by new parents, right? And there's a very deep trauma of rejection usually. Or even sometimes prenatal trauma when mother was considering an abortion, for example, right? Terminating pregnancy. And the fetus can feel this energy, and they can feel rejected already. And so we want to go as deep as we can to heal this first original trauma of rejection. I probably wouldn't go deeper into the past when we work with the regrets, because usually regrets associated with the event that, some kind of situation that close nearby, or it, in my experience at least, it doesn't have to be repeated through the years. Regrets, they usually like where we can find them. I regret about not, I don't know, applying for the job that I wanted. I regret about not getting education in the field that I actually passionate about, right? So usually we don't need to go deep into regrets. Did I answer your question, Tanya? Thank you. Okay, good.
So, Polina, I had this question.
Yes, please go ahead.
When we ask about resentment here, so is it only with people? What about someone resenting their body or
Good question.
a part of something like a body, or resenting something else, not only relationships and people, but somewhere indirect resentment of self? Is
Yeah,
it possible?
great. Yeah. Of course it's possible. People can resent their body, they can resent themselves, they can resent life, something abstract like this. But then again, I'm pretty sure you can still try to see if this resentment is deeper and if it's somewhere in the childhood. But if not, you can just I would say trust your intuition in this kind of case and connect to the creator and make sure that you just sense the truth about it, and if you need to go deeper, or you can just ask about how does it serve you to resent your body? What's good
Sure.
about
Thank you.
resenting your body? And
Because I wanted to ask about people who are obese, and whenever I come across them, they are usually that I don't like myself when I see myself in the mirror. So is it equivalent to resenting themselves?
could be.
Okay, thank you.
I think there's no one set of questions for each client, right? We still have to adjust our digging process for each client. And I think what works best is just to be genuinely interested in the belief system that your client has, and just explore it with an open mind to see how it is for them, how they see the world. Just be curious about it. That works the best. Working with resenting the body. I worked with a client who had a cancer. She entered remission. She was in remission for 3 years, but the resentment towards her body was still pretty strong, and she felt that her body betrayed her. So she felt like her body turned against her, and she kept this resentment against her body. And we needed to work on this in order to heal the whole cancer experience, and to help her to move on. That was an important part. So it's a great question. Thank you. Yeah, we definitely don't feel resentment against people only. Yeah.
Polina, will we get the recording? Please.
Yes, we do record this session right now.
Yes. Can we get a copy, please?
Of course. Yeah.
Thank you so
I will
much. I'm so
send it.
grateful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, questions. Do you have any more questions? Would you like to okay, I resume recording. One of the most common mistakes that I see is that people tend to bury themselves. Are you familiar with it? That happens when we skip the bottom belief and we go deeper. We go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And then we don't remember how we actually started this process, because we are so far away from original request, and we don't remember what exactly was there in the beginning. And usually client is confused and they don't know how it's relevant to their request. And even if we do digging at that level, or some downloads on this level, they still don't understand how it's relevant to their original request. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to actually stop at the right moment, right? And to the indication of the right moment, I already mentioned, that's usually a feeling. When your client is experiencing strong feelings, that's indication for you that you're at the right level and you hit the bottom belief and you need to do healing right here. And you don't need to explain your client why and how this is relevant to their request, because they know, they feel it, it's relevant, right? The whole body is telling them, yeah, the whole emotional state is telling them that's what happened to me. And now it's affecting me right now in my life, right? Happened 20 years ago and it's still affecting me right here. That's why I'm crying here. So don't go too deep. Always pay attention to your client's emotions and you wouldn't miss bottom belief. Okay, so don't bury yourself. Another mistake that people do is when they start asking questions from kind of different subjects, again, not relevant to your original request. For example, you start working with why do you resent your father, and your client is remembering traumatic situation, and some people ask, well, where was your mother? Did you feel betrayed by your mother that she didn't pay attention to you? Or I was asking like support from my mother and she said, don't like disturb me right now, and you might feel rejected, right? So we kind of tend to start digging so many issues that are not really connected and not really relevant to original request, that we actually make the process unmanageable. This state that we put ourselves in, it's already unmanageable, because every time we go and start a question that's not relevant to original request, our clients feel like, we kind of touch one wound after another and they feel worse, but then we don't know how to handle this, right? We don't know how to actually close the digging process that is started. And that, can be not very compassionate even towards our clients. So when you do the process, when you dig the process, make sure that the questions you ask, they are relevant to original request, and you go deeper and deeper with this request in order to find the bottom belief. But you don't go around just, touching all the possible traumas that a client had. You understand what I mean? So you need to make sure that you are actually staying within the subject and you're working on the resentment in relationships with your specific parent, right? With a father or a mother, because usually people have a difficult relationship, might have, not all of them, but might have difficult relationships with one parent and difficult relationship with another parent. And, we tend to have resentments towards each of them, and we don't want to mix those two things, right, together, because each relationship will require attention, a specific attention and digging process. We don't want to mix those things. So we want to make sure that we still working on the original request every time we go deeper.
Elena?
Uh-huh.
So if the client sort of starts bringing both parents into the conversation, would you then stop them and say, let's focus on,
Yes.
say, the father? Right?
Yeah, I would do this because I would say, I understand it's important for you, but let's finish this kind of process. Let's finish the work on relationship with your father, and then we can start talking about relationship with your mother. I usually assure them we're not going to forget it. We will definitely address it, but let's focus on one thing at a time.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. To be honest, sometimes clients, as Penny just mentioned, not really helpful. Sometimes they bring up the stories that definitely, not relevant to original request. But I believe that it's our responsibility to keep them focused, right? And sometimes I remember one of my clients would say, oh, actually, I remember, I had a situation in my work when everybody was doing that, and I felt like rejected and blah, blah, blah. And we were working, let's say, on resentment with a partner. And I was like, how is this relevant? Tell me how is this relevant, because I don't see it. If you feel that there is a connection between those two episodes, tell me what's the connection, because I'm failing to see it. And she was like, oh, yeah, okay, maybe they're not connected, right? And so we keep focused on the original request, because sometimes people bring up stories that just in general, when they felt bad, when they felt hurt, right? And I think it's our responsibility to stay focused and keep in mind original request. Okay. Another common thing that I see, and that doesn't have to be necessarily with an experienced practitioner. Sometimes experienced practitioners can have this too. We not knowingly actually create circumstances and conditions for our clients to experience resistance. Sometimes we don't explain them why they're doing certain things, why we're doing certain process. Sometimes we don't create a safe enough environment for them, and we don't provide this feeling of safety for them, and they don't feel like they trust us. They don't feel like sharing something very intimate with us, and they start resisting to the whole process of healing. Sometimes it happens because we break up the connection with our client. We break up this rapport that we have. Let's say we might create this rapport with them, right? This safe, intimate space where they feel like they can share information. But then what happens is, and I've seen it many times, my students doing it, when they work on the bottom belief, replacing it with a new belief, they start doing downloads. And when they start doing downloads, they kind of get lost, in this downloads, and they keep downloading and downloading and downloading and downloading. And the client is sitting there like, what the hell am I doing here? How is this relevant to me, right? So what happens is that when we are too focused on downloading new energies, and we don't pay attention to what's happening at the moment with our client, we're losing them. We're losing connection with them. And they stopped actually participating in the healing process. And when they stop participating in the healing process, we have something like that. When we drag them somewhere where they don't want to be because they don't understand how it's relevant to them. Okay. So what we need to do is
hilarious. This is so hilarious.
But it's so true, right? I mean, I'm asking you right now as clients, did you feel this way anytime in your theta healing session when your practitioner would do something to you and you don't understand what exactly they're doing and how it's relevant to you? I felt this many times while taking one of the classes when you work with a practitioner, and I would feel like I don't understand where we had it right now. I don't understand how this download's relevant to me. Like, I'm lost, right? My practitioner lost me as client. I'm not cooperating. I'm in resistance, okay? Also, when I find myself feeling this way is when my practitioner, my partner, for example, gives me a diagnosis. I hate this. I hate being diagnosed when they tell me, you have this kind of problem, you have this kind of problem, you have this, you need to work on this and this and this. Oh my God, I'm like, it sounds like it's a surprise I'm still alive. I have so many problems. And I stop cooperating in this moment, because what I want to feel is that my opinion still matters. And so what I want to feel is that when you, like my practitioner, my partner, if you see something inside me, ask me if that resonates with me. Okay. And that's what I'm teaching my students. When you do body scanning, or when you work even with the beliefs or feelings, if you think you found bottom belief, ask your client if that resonates with them. Ask them if they feel like it's their bottom belief, if they have it, okay? Always ask their opinion, and when you do downloads, ask them how they feel. To help them to track these downloads landing in their body, in the auric field, right? Because we want to actually track down the changes that's happening in the way they feel. This is how they will recognize that healing actually happened for them. But if we keep downloading some kind of energies and they feel like that's not happening to them, right? It's not relevant to them, and they might just realize, or they may just feel like that's not about them, and they wouldn't feel any results from this healing process, okay? So always make sure that, I usually say, you have 2 ears, right? Use one ear for your client and your second ear for the creator. But you need to keep in mind that your client and your client's opinion is important, and as what the creator is telling you. And you need to incorporate both. You need to make sure that your client is feeling heard and understood, and that, you know, their opinion is important in this work. But also you need to make sure that you receive truth information from the creator, because sometimes clients can be mistaken, right? They, I would say, they don't have sometimes enough integrity or enough courage to admit certain feelings that they have, to admit certain beliefs that they have. They not being self-honest, right? Honest with themselves even. And sometimes they can tell us certain things that are not true, but they honestly believe it. Does this make sense? Okay.
Yes, definitely.
Good. So these are most common mistakes that I see, and they definitely will make your process of digging miserable. Like really create struggle that can be avoided. You don't need to make this process more difficult than it already is, right? Questions. Do you have any more questions?
So I have one. I'm sorry for my bad English. And how do you stay focused when you dig on yourself?
Good question. Yeah. First of all, I would say make sure that nobody will distract you. I would choose a moment when I'm alone at home, and I know that I have at least 30 minutes without my husband disturbing me or my daughter's crying. Vienna says that when she's doing self-digging, she actually locked herself right in the room. She tells everybody, don't disturb me right now, I'm working, right? I'm in the process of digging. I also find it helpful to make notes. Every question you ask yourself, make notes, right? Write it down and connect to the creator and this energy of highest truth. Find your answer and put it down, okay? Keep the progress records. That will help you to stay focused because our mind, it's a wandering thing. It likes to wander, let's be honest. And so especially when you work with yourself, you can just easily get away with like, oh, maybe I need to do some remodeling in my kitchen, like some kind of random thoughts that popped up in your hand, and you can get lost. So to stay focused, make notes. Even if you get distracted, you will be able to get back to the process and at least start it, from the moment where you finished previously. And there are like several questions that are helpful in the digging process with yourself. And I use them when I work with myself, and they just require honesty. And if you are connected to the creator, it doesn't take much time to realize the bottom belief. One of the most important questions that I like to ask myself when I need to do self-digging is, how am I creating this in my life? I recommend to use this question when you feel like the whole world is against you, and when you feel like the reason of what's happening in your life is somewhere there, like somebody else is ruining your life, right? Somebody else is doing it to you. And that's the right moment. That's a perfect moment to ask the creator, how am I creating this in my life? Because we always create it in our life. If that's happening in our life, we created it. So the question is, how am I creating this? I have a great story associated with this and how helpful it can be to ask this kind of question. And I had a just miracle when I did the digging. You want me to tell you? It's a great example.
Yes, please.
I like stories, actually telling stories when I teach, because usually they're like through stories we remember things, and they're so telling. So when I met my soulmate, my husband, in one of Vienna's classes, it's another great story, but let's not go there. He was in America and I was in Russia, and I had to get a fiancé visa to move to United States. And to get a fiancé visa, you need to go through a medical examination because they want to make sure that you don't have any contagious diseases and all of that. And so I thought it's going to be formality and probably will take about an hour and there won't be any problems. And I am in the hospital doing this medical examination. They did X-ray to make sure I don't have tuberculosis. And I thought, it can be another minute or so. And they're telling me, oh, you need to come back and we need to do another X-ray. And it was strange, but okay, let's do another one. So they did another X-ray and they say, we need to do third one because we don't like what we see. And I thought, oh my God, what's going on? That's so strange because I know I'm not sick. I don't have any problems with my lungs. So what's going on? And after another X-ray, they telling me, we can see some kind of dark area in your lungs and we cannot approve your fiancé visa. We need to do additional testings. We need to make sure that that's not tuberculosis and all of that. And I was like, what? And I already sold my apartment in St. Petersburg. I'm like, really to move, right? Because I thought it's going to take a couple of weeks and I'm ready to move forward. And they telling me, no, we're going to keep you here for a couple of months. And I was so scared. And I remember coming back to my hotel because I need to do it in Moscow. It's only one hospital in the whole country where you can actually do this medical examination. And the next day I would have to go to embassy for interview for my fiance visa. And I'm spending this evening alone in my hotel room and I'm crying. And then I'm like, okay, you're a theta healing practitioner. Do something about it. And I go up to the creator and I ask the creator, how am I creating this in my life? Creator, please show me how am I creating this? Because I know that's something that I create, right? That's not doctors doing to me. And the creator is telling me that on the subconscious level of my mind, I'm so scared to move to another country. And the creator is telling me you have such a strong fear about leaving your family, your friends, your community, your clients, everything behind, and moving to another country with a different language, different culture, everything's different, right? And the creator is telling me because of this fear, you actually kind of, this fear works as a brakes in this process. On the subconscious mind, you moving forward, but on the subconscious level, you actually not going anywhere. You don't want to go anywhere. And I was like, okay, what am I going to do here? And the creator is telling me you need to kind of release this fear. You need to work on this fear and you need to teach yourself how to move forward and how to have a courage and kind of be open to opportunities that the future holds for you. So I did the digging on the fear, and then I downloaded myself how to move forward without fear. And next day, I remember I fell asleep, just crashed, being so tired after this digging process and after these tears. The next day, I had an interview, which went great. And they told me, okay, as soon as we receive your medical examination results, you're free to go. And I was like, I'm not sure if we'll receive it, but okay. And I'm coming back to my hotel room, and you're not supposed to bring your phone to the embassy because of security reasons, right? And I'm coming back to my room and I take my phone, I'm looking at my phone and there is a text from doctors and they tell me, we had a consulting with American doctors and they don't see any problems in your x-ray. So we're gonna approve it and send to the embassy. So I think that was quite miraculous, this change, this dramatic change that happened. And I've seen something like this happening in my life and in my clients' life pretty often. When we do the honest digging, we change, we shift energy within us, and the reality respond to it pretty quickly. So digging, when it's done honest, when it's done in a proper way, it can be quite powerful to shift reality and to shift the healing process, right?
Amazing experience, Paulina. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. Thank you for.
Thank you. It's very, very encouraging.
Thank you for your comments. Yeah. Okay. So is there anything else I can do for you right now? I don't want to actually go into more digging protocols because the logic is, pretty much the same, and they still land better if we practice each of them. I honestly would like to invite you to one of my digging classes. I'm going to teach one of them in the end of December, and one of them will be in the beginning of January, because this is when we actually able to go deeper and work on each of the protocols. So in December, I'm teaching Dig Deeper class. In the evening time in the United States and Canada, 4 to 10 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And in January, oops, it's 8 to 9. I don't know why it's 0 here. Sorry about that. In the January, it's going to be in the morning hours in the United States and Canada, and it's going to be evening time in Europe. If you already did Dig Deeper class, if you took Dig Deeper class already, you can do my class for half price. And I personally like to take some classes twice, and I want to encourage you to do the same. Not necessarily with me, but if you did already basic class or advanced, try sometimes do it again, because you can see actually how much more you learn from retaking certain classes. I did intuitive anatomy twice. I did basic class twice. So it's really great to sometimes go even deeper to learn more from different instructors as well, because we all, all instructors are so different, and we have, I think, different perspectives, a little bit different. And so each class can be amazing experience. And I would be happy to share my knowledge and my experience with you about digging. Okay. I also plan to do, sorry, I'm gonna stop recording here.